Is it ironic that I'm homeless? When I was 14, I wanted for nothing more than to be a hobo. My father had his heart set on a career for me in law. My mother spent so much of her time living in fear of my father, she had no energy left to care about what I became. For 3 years I wrestled with myself. I wished for nothing but to roam the world, free to follow whatever path fortune might lay before me. But my father had worked so hard all his life and sacrificed so much for my education. I was, as he was so very fond of reminding me, deeply indebted to him. It was going to be my responsibility to provide for him in his old age, as he had provided for me in my infancy. I was bound to my parents by chains of guilt that dug deep wounds into my psyche and threatened to strangle a life from me. My conscience tore at itself. The mountains called, but I refused to acknowledge them. The ocean beckoned, but I closed my ears to her. In my dreams I journeyed beyond the horizon. Secretly my soul fared far from home. But my heart, though it ached to beat in strange lands, was a prisoner in a body that could not break away. Like a wolf in a cage, my mind paced restlessly over the same familiar territory, wearing a pit of hateful frustration and painful boredom into my life. As an outlet for my frustration, I learned to play guitar. I hid my sorrow behind a wall of angry, resentful music. I buried my feelings beneath the cacophonous avalanche of chords and scales, played ever faster, lest reality should infiltrate through the silence between the notes. I used music as a junkie uses smack. I could not live without it. My guitar became my closest friend, and a substitute for a lover. My fingers would caress her gently, teasing her into song. But as my father had beaten and abused my mother, so I, in a furious rage, would sometimes tear notes screaming from the neck of my beloved, my right hand pounding and bashing her body into sobbing submission. And she, by allowing me to use and abuse her thus, saved me from despair. The summer I turned 18 should have heralded the end of my childhood. Others my age were embracing their chosen futures, eager to prove themselves to those whom they sought to emulate. But I aspired to nothing, for nothing inspired me. For 3 years I had promised myself that I would take flight at the end of Year 12, head north, work on a fishing boat perhaps, and sail up through Asia. Vague dreams that would become more defined once my feet were on the path. But when the moment actually arrived, I found pattern had become habit, and time had moulded me a coward. So I submitted myself to my father's stronger will. Instead of becoming a vagrant, I enrolled at university and resigned myself to a life of captivity. But I knew in my heart that I would be unable to quell the storm that roared within me. I would party and rage and wage war with the world. If I must go to university, I thought, I would only be there for 1 year. I was certain of that. I would have such a fucking good time in my first year. I would never be allowed back.